literally living a fan's dream, coming so close to executive producing a show that meant this much to you personally, to steer the course of what you considered at the time to be the third biggest franchise, a show that you were so passionate about, and then to have it, fall apart and taken away. How did that feel?
Well, I think it felt exactly as the fans felt. And not to take away anything from the success of the current version, because I hold no ill will, and I think David Icke and Ron Moore have done a great job with the show. It's not the show I would have done, or the show Bryan would have done. And not to speak for Bryan, but it's not the show we were planning on doing. But they got it done. They got it on the air, and that was where the studio put their bet behind. And I understand that. And it's become a tremendous critical success for them. And there's a lot of elements and tone in that show which was very similar to what we were going to do. The only thing I'd say was different was that we were doing, as opposed to a hard sci-fi show, we were going to do a more pop culture sci-fi show. Look, that's where my love is. I respect hard science fiction, but if it's a choice between hard science fiction and a good pop sci-fi movie, that's where my heart is, and I can't be false to that. I love Star Trek, I love Star Wars, I love Galactica. Look, I love X-Men. X-Men was a movie I wanted to do since I was 12 years old. So yeah, I mean, it's sort of in that sort of sensibility. I respect movies like Minority Report or AI or the harder science fiction films, but it's not my cup of tea.
You talked a little bit earlier about Firefly, and of course, Firefly turned out to be a really good show that Fox, from all appearances, completely bungled with poor promotion, frequent preemption, and no tolerance for building an audience. In retrospect, do you have any concern that Battlestar would have been given the same kind of treatment?
I don't. I actually think we probably would have had an ace up our sleeve that Joss didn't have, which was the name recognition. And Joss is, he's a great guy. I actually, visited him on the set of Serenity, because I know Lonnie Peristeer, who ended up doing the effects for Galactica, because I was talking to bringing Lonnie on back in 2001 with Zoic, which, and Lonnie did all the effects for Angel and Buffy and did an amazing job on Firefly. So, yeah, I mean, I think there would have been battles. I think there is a lack of understanding on the network side of what makes a genre show work. I think it's also in Hollywood, it's sort of a rule. Nobody wants to be first, but everybody wants to be second. So if you have a 90210 which hits, then everyone's going to come out with their Melrose Place or whatever, which is going to follow in its footsteps and be similar and try and just capture that. I'm sure this season we're going to see a lot of Desperate Housewives knockoffs, which are just going to feel, geez, that's sort of, which is good and it's bad, because it means that, okay, there was a success and something changed the tone of the industry, but now everyone's trying to copycat it. And I think with, when dealing with Fox, and Gail Berman was great, and it was a great marriage while it lasted, and it would have been the perfect network. If somebody said, which network do you want to be on, it would have been a toss-up between ABC and Fox. But I was glad we were at Fox, because it was also a younger, hipper, and they got that, and they were really behind the show. And unfortunately, when 9/11 happened, and then with us losing Bryan, and Fox Network fought to keep Bryan on board, but it was a decision that was handed down from higher above.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the future of Galactica as relates to the original series. Last month, Glenn Larson made a statement at a convention in England that he planned to have a Battlestar movie on the big screen within a year and a half. Now a lot of fans, we've heard this from Glenn before, so we were a little skeptical. So, the money question is, to your knowledge, what, if any, rights does Glenn have in regards to producing a Battlestar project, TV or feature film?
I would have to, I can't speak for Glenn on that part, but I still think there's life in in the old series or continuation of the old series while the new series is going on. I think it is possible to do both. And actually, I presented to David Kissinger when he was still at Universal. I had spoken with friends over at Cartoon Network, and they wanted to, because I'd been trying, okay, how can I get this story out there, and how can I continue this? And so I said, what about as an animated thing? And Cartoon Network really liked the idea a lot. So I went to Universal and I said, look, is this a possibility? I think we can get Cartoon Network on board. It's a brand for them. You can have, the new Galactica, which is, again, like the next generation, as we're doing classic Galactica with, our Kirk and Spock. You can do Picard and Riker. And Kissinger said, let me think about it. And about 2 weeks later, he came back and he said, look, we don't want to confuse the brand, which I did understand and I also didn't understand, because the turnaround on an animated series would have been probably about 2 years. But the decision from Universal was no, they didn't want to do an animated series.
Are these the same people that have 2 Stargates on and saw that there was always 2 Star Trek series on at the same time?
It's I wish I could understand the reasoning, and I try to convince the powers of that be. Unfortunately, it's not my decision. It's look, creatively, you put me in charge of the show. I'll know where to take it. I'll know where to, not only make fans happy, but make a whole new generation of fans. But as far as the trying to figure out the psychology of studio decisions, that is something which has baffled every creative person on the planet for 100 years.
Now, the animated series would have picked up right after The Hand of God and would not have been set 25 years later?
No, it still would have been set 25 years later. And I would have gone back to Bryan and Dan and Billy and, hopefully regroup, but I didn't make any of those phone calls because I didn't get the thumbs up from Kissinger in order to start that. But, nothing would have been more fun for me than to get back in that Galactica sandbox with Bryan and then making that phone call to Dan and Billy to get him back on board.
Well, fans have come together to try to, in the wake of the CFF ads, what can we do now? And the idea of a direct-to-DVD feature has come up. How do you feel about that as a route for bringing the original Battlestar back?
It's definitely a route, and I'm definitely in communication with Glenn as far as, trying to figure out how to, get the old girl up and going, and also make it, the one thing which I think, I don't want to say is short-sighted, but the tone of the new show, which is its own tone and works on its own, but doesn't capture what I think is the possibilities also, again, to get in the younger audience, to get in the family audience, and therefore expand for Universal, one of the great cash machines, because that's what they understand. It's all about how do we bring money into the corporation? How do we keep those quarterly numbers up? And that would be through merchandising.